More vaccine help for Windsor with the first doses of Moderna arriving. The first shots given in long-term care homes start Monday. Plus, mass testing at 2 of the city's homeless shelters. It comes after a COVID-19 outbreak at a local Salvation Army shelter. Live look outside of the Ambassador Bridge tonight. A rainy day in Windsor should continue into the evening. Far cry from that white Christmas that hit us last week. Nick Sirkovich joins us to take a full look at the forecast tonight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for watching. It's been a deadly month here in Windsor, Essex. 49 people have died of COVID-19 since December 1st. Today, the region has some of the worst numbers in the province when it comes to the pandemic. Let's take a look here. The positivity rate averaged across 7 days is at 10% in Windsor, Essex. So 10% of tests are coming back positive. That's twice the provincial number. 1,814 people have an active case of COVID-19 in Windsor, Essex today. The rate of active cases in region, it's the highest in Ontario when you look at it population-wise, above Toronto, York, and Peel region. When you look at weekly cases, once again, Windsor, Essex has the highest in Ontario when adjusted for the population. But there's one number suggesting things could be getting better. The reproduction value is below 1 at 0.9. That's how many people a positive person is likely to infect. When it's below 1, according to the health unit, it means that the outbreak is getting under control. There's more hope in our community as the Moderna vaccine arrives in Windsor today. The health unit says that they'll be rolled out to long-term care and retirement homes starting Monday. CBC's Katerina Georgieva has been following this. She joins us now live from a home that'll be among the first to get those shots. Katerina, tell us about this round of doses.
Well, Chris, this next batch of the vaccine is dedicated to going into the arms of residents of long-term care and retirement homes. And one of the homes that's first in line is Heron Terrace. That's the home right behind me. And it was one of the homes that was hardest hit during the first wave. And so the promise of vaccines coming to this home offers a layer of protection to prevent that from ever happening again. Now, before we hear more from Heron Terrace, I want to talk a little bit more about how the distribution is going to work. Now, when we first received the Pfizer vaccine, those doses, they were dedicated to staff at long-term care and retirement homes. And a big reason for that was because of transportation issues. Pfizer is a bit more difficult to move around because of temperature requirements. So staff had to go to the Sportsplex Center to get their shots there. Moderna is a little bit more flexible. So in this case, the health unit will be able to transport the vaccine to the homes and get them directly to the most vulnerable, to the residents themselves. Heron Terrace says it's grateful that it is among the first group of homes that's going to get the Moderna vaccine. It says it received confirmation of this from both the province and from the health unit. So here's what the CEO had to say.
Incredibly relieved and incredibly lucky. So we, as you said, we're hit very hard in that first wave. We've been, the staff of the home have been incredibly vigilant since then, but we've also been incredibly lucky. Because we know how just how aggressive the virus is, and once it gets into your home, I don't think we have any misconceptions that it's going to solve everything, but it's a huge addition to what we call our toolbox.
And Scotland says that he hopes that they'll be able to do their first vaccinations as early as Monday. And this isn't the only home that's excited. I spoke with the owner of Cardinal Place, and the owner, he himself actually was among the first recipients of the Pfizer vaccine. Now, he doesn't know when exactly Cardinal Place might be getting the Moderna vaccine. He hasn't received confirmation yet on this. However, just the prospect of it, he says he's elated by it, and he says that families at the home are excited as well.
Very excited for it, very positive, very excited, looking forward as well to the relief. Anyone who's here is worried about it. The loved ones that have a senior and elder here are very worried for them about this, and they're looking forward to as well great relief in knowing that a vaccine's in place.
Now, Kat, with the Pfizer vaccine, that rollout was handled by the hospital. Moderna, the health unit's leading that charge. What's it going to look like?
Right, so the health unit has its own freezer, so that's where the vaccine is being stored at this time. So the way it's going to work is the health unit is assembling teams of 8 to 10 nurses at one time. They're going to go to homes one facility at a time. And the plan is to vaccinate all consenting residents who want the vaccine. It is, of course, voluntary, so they're going to vaccinate everybody who wants one and then move on to the next facility. And it is the homes that are at highest risk that are getting the vaccines first, and it is only homes that are not currently in outbreak that are getting this first round of the Moderna vaccine. Now, the health unit said today that the news of this arrival of the Moderna vaccine has sort of created a different kind of energy in the air.
It brings hope. There's some relief and excitement for sure. And as Dr. Ahmed said, our goal all along with the pandemic is to try to prevent people from becoming ill and people from dying from this disease. So it's great.
Now, the health unit would not confirm how many doses they've received today, but the health unit said earlier this morning that they expect or hope to be able to vaccinate more than half of all residents of long-term care and retirement homes in Windsor, Essex. Now, once vaccinations, they get rolling on Monday, the hope is that they'll be able to get to 1 to 2 homes a day, and they said that at this point they've been in touch with 8 homes for next week. Now, the medical officer of health does say that while this is, of course, good news, it doesn't mean that we can let our guards down, and that it is important to continue to remain vigilant, follow safety regulations as we continue to fight COVID-19. Chris.
Thanks, Kat. CBC's Katerina Georgieva live tonight. There's mass testing going on today in the downtown core aimed at preventing the spread of COVID-19 among some of Windsor's most vulnerable people. It comes after the region's first outbreak at a shelter and concerns that cases could spread to other shelters across the city. CBC's Sanjay Maru reports.
Lining up, braving the cold. These yellow tents are being used as a testing site for those who rely on shelters. This one-day effort could happen again in a few weeks if more shelter outbreaks emerge. And for anyone whose results come back positive, an isolation center has been designated for them. Essex Windsor EMS says plans for today's testing were already in motion, but the timeline was moved up after a recent outbreak at the Salvation Army's Center of Hope. It's one of 3 licensed shelters in Windsor, but advocates fear it may just be a matter of time before there are more outbreaks. In fact, the downtown mission says it had its first COVID-positive guest just last week. Multiple staff were exposed, but have since tested negative and are back at work. Meanwhile, that COVID-positive guest is now isolating.
We share clientele on many instances. Now, we have been trying to encourage people to not do that.
The Salvation Army declining an interview with CBC News, instead sending this statement. The Salvation Army Center of Hope in Windsor is working closely with the Windsor-Essex County Health Unit and following all established protocols and processes.
When you're dealing with homelessness, they're coming across a lot of barriers.
Like access to technology for up-to-date information about public health guidelines. But this advocate says there's other aspects to their daily lives that can't be monitored 24/7.
When you're going into certain areas of homelessness, you're not seeing that social distancing. You're not seeing the masks as much. When they're inside, yes, but once they leave the facilities, it's hard to track who's wearing a mask, who's using hand sanitization, who's using social distancing.
And the downtown mission isn't being shy about what its next move would be if an outbreak were to happen there.
I'm sure the answer I'm about to give you is not the answer that anyone's going to want to hear, but to me, it's business as usual. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, we're in a pandemic, we're in an outbreak, the show must go on, the work has to continue. It's not like we can send them somewhere else.
For now, Dunn says he's doing whatever he can to prevent an outbreak from happening at the mission, like enhanced cleaning and limiting the amount of people inside. Sanjay Maru, CBC News, Windsor.
Some people are still able to visit their loved ones at a long-term care home in an outbreak. They're called essential caregivers. CBC's Tamina Aziz now on a woman currently caring for her mom at the village at St. Clair.
Inside this home is 96-year-old Aileen Harrison. Aileen has lived at the village at St. Clair for 5 years, diagnosed with dementia, and now COVID-19 positive. Aileen's daughter Giselle is her essential caregiver. She's able to see her mom in person. Her first visit was last week.
Wheelchair was in a locked position facing her door. She was covered in food, I'm assuming her breakfast. She was really dirty. Her wheelchair was dirty.
Hotel de Grace has since taken control of key operations in the home. It's the largest outbreak in Windsor, Essex. Take a look at the numbers here. 226 cases total at the home. 134 are residents, 92 are staff. 24 people have died. Giselle says COVID has shined a light on the inequities in nursing homes, the improper care residents are getting. Giselle says she would be there with her mother every minute if she could, but she's afraid to contract the virus and pass it on to her family. She spends nights wondering if her mom will survive, and the time she gets with her now is full of fear.
If my mom didn't have COVID and things were being run differently, I wouldn't be so terrified to be around her. I'm in my PPE. She doesn't recognize me. It takes me usually until almost the end of my visit. If I'm there for 2 hours or 6 hours, she'll start to know who I am. But it's sad. She is afraid of me, and she's never been afraid of me.
Meanwhile, the CEO of Hotel de Grace says staffing levels have stabilized inside. Giselle notices the new calm, saying it has helped the level of care for people like her mom. She also hoped that the help could have arrived sooner. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
There's 90 people with COVID-19 in hospital today in Windsor, Essex, the most that there's ever been during the pandemic, and now more changes at Windsor Regional and Erie Shores Healthcare. Starting next week, all non-urgent elective surgeries at both hospitals are canceled as staff in Windsor prepare for the worst.
We're bracing ourselves for what the worst period I think that's going to be in the hospital setting in the next 1 or 2 weeks. I think the numbers are going to continue to rise. Our ICU capacity is going to be stretched to the limit. Our human health resources, doctors, nurses, everyone else that's supporting the care of patients is going to be stretched to the absolute limit over the next couple of weeks. Once we get through these 2 weeks and the effects of the lockdown take place and the vaccination efforts start to roll out, then I think we'll have turned the corner.
To help ease the pressure, only urgent or emergency surgeries will be performed. That starts Monday for both hospitals. Cancer patients will be prioritized, and Dr. Saad is reminding people that if they need urgent or emergency care after something like a stroke or a heart attack, you can still go to the hospital. Michigan's governor will not let trucks carrying hazardous waste across this bridge, the Ambassador Bridge. Politicians raised alarm bells last week about this. NDP MPP Brian Massey says rules have been in place to prevent this from happening since the bridge opened back in 1929. Republican senators put the change in a COVID-19 relief bill last month. The governor vetoed the line item earlier this week. A number of churches in our area have been busted for holding services during a lockdown. Charges have been laid, but one church leader says they won't stop doing this for long. The CBC's Katerina Georgieva reports.
I will not cease ministering to my people. I just refuse.
The pastor of this Windsor church says he has a responsibility to his parishioners. Aaron Rock was charged under the Reopening Ontario Act for holding services earlier this month. Rock says there were about 300 people per service, all wearing masks and physical distancing. The law limits the number to 10. Rock says shutting down churches isn't fair and has a negative impact on spiritual and mental health.
I'm not a virus denier, but you just can't lock people down month after month and expect that for there to not be massive consequences in other areas.
With the Harvest Bible Church in Windsor now shut down by police, the pastor is holding services in the parking lot. But Rock says he won't stop there.
We're going to be encouraging our people to meet in secret and to go underground. 100%.
The Windsor-Essex County Health Unit says it understands that religious gatherings are important to many, but right now the risk is too grave.
Doesn't matter which religion who practices, saving a life is worth more than anything else.
The Windsor Church isn't the only one that went ahead with services during lockdown. It happened not once, but twice at this Mennonite church here in Wheatley. More than 100 people at a time, no masks, 2 days in a row, the 26th and the 27th. Charges were laid under the Reopening Act. And just 10 minutes away at the Church of God, another gathering of more than 10 people on the 27th. More charges laid here as well. Meanwhile, Harvest Bible Church is planning its next steps.
But if Premier Ford and the health minister refuses to allow me to minister to my people, we're going to have to find alternative ways. I refuse on the level of conscience to abandon my people to destruction.
The pastor plans to partner with faith leaders and hold protests. Eventually, though, he says he'll circle a date on the calendar and reopen, regardless of the rules. Katerina Georgieva, CBC News, Wheatley.
It's been a turbulent 24 hours for Doug Ford's government, with his finance minister now forced to fly back from a getaway to an exclusive Caribbean island. The premier answered questions for the first time today. Greg Ross with the latest.
I'm very upset. I'm very frustrated with the situation.
On the same day, a new shipment of COVID-19 vaccines arrived in Ontario. The premier instead was forced to deal with a scandal from within his own cabinet.
People are losing their businesses. We're locking things down. And it's unacceptable that anyone, any elected official, myself included, or anyone that gets up, ignores the rules and goes down to an island. It's unacceptable, and we're going to have a very tough conversation when he gets back.
That tough conversation will be with Finance Minister Rod Phillips, who earlier this month traveled to St. Bart's for a holiday getaway with his wife, despite constant public warnings from his own government not to. Phillips attempted to explain his decision in a statement, saying, "Had I been aware then of the eventual December 26th province-wide shutdown, we would have canceled the trip."
If it's not essential, then stay home. People have canceled all kinds of life events. I mean, people canceled weddings and they canceled trips. Some people canceled their dream trip of a lifetime.
NDP opposition leader Andrea Horvath says the explanation is unacceptable and is demanding Phillips suffer severe consequences.
I think Mr. Phillips has to be taken out of cabinet.
Horvath says Phillips even attempted to cover up the tropical trip with a series of tweets that made it seem as if he were still in the province, like this message sent out on Christmas Eve.
And I want to thank each and every one of you for what we are doing to protect our most vulnerable while we celebrate this very, very special but challenging holiday season.
I nearly fell off my chair when I saw that. I mean, he was obviously trying to make it seem as though he was, in fact, in Ontario.
It also appears he's doing the same thing in this Zoom meeting released by the Ontario Liberals today. It's reportedly from 3 days after Phillips landed in St. Bart's, and the Liberals say waves can be heard in the background.
But it's just an example. I think faith communities.
As for Premier Ford, he says Phillips didn't tell anyone about his trip before he left, but the Premier admitted he did find out about it days after Phillips arrived in the Caribbean, meaning when Ford was telling the public this.
During the holidays, hunker down.
He was well aware of the fact that his finance minister was in St. Bart's. Today, Ford took responsibility for not taking action sooner.
My mistake, and I take full responsibility. At that time, I should have said, get your backside back into Ontario, and I didn't do that.
At this point, the Premier isn't saying what punishment Phillips will face, if any, other than a stern talking to. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
That trip to St. Bart's, not the only overseas travel Phillips has done this year. His office confirming to CBC News today that the minister took a summer vacation to Switzerland back in August. Another live look outside here, as it's a little bit of a wet one here in Windsor. Nick Sirkovich is going to join us next to give us a full look at our forecast. Joining us now for a live look at the weather is Nick Cirkovich. Looking a little more like a Windsor winter right now. Bit of rain out there.
Yeah, a little bit of rainfall, exactly. That on the heels of snow, of course, Christmas Day. And here we go. We're back into some rain. We're going to get some mixed precipitation. Rain showers generally clearing out. The risk for a few flurries tonight. Just on the tail end of this thing. Nothing accumulating though. As we head through tomorrow morning, mix of sun and cloud to mostly cloudy skies. That's basically the story through tomorrow. A little bit in the way of snow flurries up around the Goderich area, but that's about it. Nice day into New Year's Day, into Friday. And then as we head through Friday afternoon, our next system comes through, and that's going to bring with it, at first, a little bit of a mix of rain and snow possibly, but really it's just going to be a rainfall event. In the transition, though, could see some icy roads. That comes Friday afternoon, and that's our next sort of weather maker here. 4 degrees right now in the Windsor area, Chatham at 5 degrees as well. As we head through tonight, down into the minus single digits, minus 4 degrees for Windsor, with the winds, though, making it feel like about minus 8 to minus 10 heading through the overnight period, and a few flurries, but again, just very light stuff. By tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at temperatures up to about 0 degrees. Mix of sun and cloud to mostly cloudy skies is what we're looking at. And it actually stays nice into Friday morning, but by Friday afternoon, that's where our system comes through. Generally a rainfall event, about 15 to 20 millimeters is possible with this thing. Clears out for Saturday. Saturday doesn't look too bad, mainly cloudy skies. And then again, a little bit of a mix of rain and snow heading into Sunday. If you have outdoor plans Saturday, probably the better of the days.
Okay, something to keep an eye on. Thanks for this, Nick.
You bet.
Pets in high demand during the pandemic, but how they're being matched with families has changed. More on that coming up after the break. You've probably heard that pets were in high demand during the pandemic, but the way that they're getting adopted, that's changed. The local Humane Society moved to an online matching system. Dale Molnar with more.
Let's go for a walk, Bodie. Come on, Otis.
Bob Flannery has a new best friend, a pug named Otis.
Otis.
Flannery adopted Otis from the Windsor Essex County Humane Society. He couldn't be happier.
This dog, the greatest dog I ever had. He just listens. He goes for walks. He's happy. He's never upset.
Flannery is just one of dozens of people who have adopted pets from the Humane Society this year, but instead of coming in person to pick a pet, Flannery chose Otis by first looking at pictures online.
You can see pictures of the animals, you can see descriptions of them, and then there's a link on the adoption page to submit an application.
Once that's filled out, an adoption counselor calls and sets up an appointment for an in-person visit. Masks are required, of course.
We have people come into our front reception area, and they go over any of the paperwork. They get a lot of the documents virtually, so that makes it even easier. And then they pay the adoption fee, and then they take the animal home.
The new parents can bring the pet back if it's not working out, but Melanie Coulter says they've had very few returns.
Since we've been opened, our adoption numbers for cats have been remarkably consistent with last year, and we're seeing great results. People are really happy with their adopted animals, and we're getting lots of happy endings.
Coulter says the number of dogs being adopted is lower than last year, but that's because they aren't getting as many in this year. As for Flannery, he likes the new virtual method.
The good thing about the internet is you can see what individual dogs are out there. Once you get there, then you can, they give you a 10-minute alone time with the dog to see whether there's going to be a match.
Good boy, Otis.
Coulter says the system is working so well, she says they may continue using it to a certain extent even after the pandemic. Now, if you want to adopt a dog or a cat, just go to windsorhumane.org. Like Scout here. Hey, kitty, how you doing? Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
That Dale, always making friends out there in the field. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. You can find more on these stories at cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.